Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor. You can catch up with me after this presentation at markgaylor.com. Okay, now in this demo we're going to look at shooting tethered using Adobe Lightroom. This is where we connect the camera to the computer and the images come directly into Adobe Lightroom where we can review them and adjust settings before continuing to shoot. This is obviously an advantage when we're working as part of a creative team, maybe with an art director or a client who wants a large screen review of the images as they're being captured. It gives us other additional advantages, such as the histogram we're looking at inside of Adobe Lightroom is the actual histogram of the raw file. Now, most DSLRs and mirrorless cameras are actually showing us a histogram of the JPEG that the camera would be writing if we weren't shooting in the raw file format. The other advantage of shooting shooting tethered to Lightroom is we can quickly zoom in and check sharp focus to see whether the lens and autofocus is performing well. Now obviously this is very difficult to assess accurately on the back of the camera. Okay, so those are the advantages of shooting tethered using Adobe Lightroom. Now, some of the things before we get started is if we want really a very accurate image coming into Lightroom that we can trust for both tonality and color, I do recommend that we create some custom profiles. Here you see somebody sitting at a desk, and what they're doing is they're profiling and calibrating their monitor. Now, this is something that I recommend if you want a very accurate view of the images coming off the camera. Now, to get an even more accurate view, you would not only profile and characterize your monitor, but you'd also do the same with your camera. And on the desk in this preview image here, we see a device that allows us to create a custom profile for that camera. Okay, so that's the first part of the demo here, is how do we create these custom camera profiles. Now, this is one of the products that we can use for creating a custom profile. This particular brand is made by X-Rite. It's called a color checker passport. Now, in order to create a custom profile with very accurate color, we simply put this in the first shot and then take one image. The software that comes with this device will then allow us to create a very accurate profile, so all of these colors on this swatch are very accurately displayed by the camera and then by the computer monitor. Now, if we don't want to be shooting one of these test shots every time we shoot, we can create what's called a dual illuminant profile. This is where we take one shot of the color passport in daylight and then another second shot inside when we're shooting with tungsten lights. We then can collect both of the shots. I'll just go into group view here. We can shift click to select both shots, and then we can come down to our file menu and come down to export with a preset, and then we'll find the color checker passport option here. We then get to name our profile. I would typically give this the profile name of the camera, and then we hit save, and Lightroom will then build a profile in conjunction with the software that ships with this passport. Okay, I'm going to cancel out because I've already done this process in order to create a custom profile for my new Sony Alpha A7R II. Now, what we're going to get is when the profile has been successfully generated, the only reasons that this would fail is if one of the exposures is overexposed, or the passport is too crooked to the camera, and it's the software is having difficulty picking up these crop marks here. So you may have to repeat that process if that happens. Okay, and then when the profile is generated, it's automatically installed in the correct place in your computer's operating system. In order to use this profile, however, we then have to restart Lightroom before we can find that profile. Okay, now here you'll see we're coming to this in a little bit later, but this is the tethered shooting interface inside of Lightroom, and instead of picking up the developed settings, which is the maybe the Adobe defaults, is we're picking up the custom profile, which I named after the camera here. So we're looking at very, very accurate color. Now, some people will talk about the differences between a program such as Lightroom and another product such as Capture One, and some will say that they prefer colors or tonality in one program compared to the other, where actually this process would remove that debate, because images, color and tonality will look not just have a certain character, they'll actually be correct. And so the starting point in both pieces of software is likely to be much, much closer if we go through this process. Okay, so let's take a look at, once we've created that profile and chosen that profile, how do we create new defaults? Okay, so that means every time the images come in from this camera and lens combination, they're automatically going to be picking up that new camera profile as a default. Okay, so one of the things we're going to come up to is we're going to come over to the Develop module, and we're going to come down to Camera Calibration here. Okay, now here we have the Adobe standard profile. Okay, but once we've created that profile with that X-Rite Color Passport, we can now choose that, and here it comes. Here is my custom profile for this camera. It's the A7R2. Okay, so now I've chosen that. Now, do you notice that big pop in color? Okay, this gives a much more accurate view of those colors. I'll just do that again. I'll just go back to the Adobe standard and just watch how flat and desaturated those blues are, and the skin tones are just a little bit pale. But once we've profiled that camera, we're going to get really accurate color. And so if you're not absolutely satisfied with your default setting of your images inside of Lightroom, I highly recommend that you create a custom profile for your camera. They're not expensive devices, and you'll be amazed at how better your images look right off the bat. Okay, so I've selected A7R2 as my custom profile. Now, typically I would just now hold down the Option key or the Alt key on a PC, and then we get to Set New Defaults. Now, you'll still see some variations compared to images in Lightroom and maybe another program such as Capture One. If you've heard other photographers saying that they see their images are a little bit sharper and there's slightly less noise in Capture One, that's because there's a little bit of processing inside of Capture One that doesn't happen by default inside of Lightroom. I think that's a good idea, but some people who like their images just to be a little bit sharper and have a little less noise when we zoom in and pixel peep at 100%, we can actually create a very similar image to what we see in other programs. So without doing any basic adjustments, we would just go in maybe to the Detail tab, and if you do prefer your images a little bit sharper, I actually think this is an incredibly sharp image, but if you're maybe working with a kit lens and you do want a little bit of additional sharpness, then we could just bump that up from 25 to 35, maybe even to 45 if you like very, very sharp images. And if you're noticing that even with low ISO you're getting a little bit of texture in those smooth areas, then I do know that Capture One applies an automated noise reduction even to low ISO images, and so if you did want to replicate that very, very smooth continuous tones, we could just bump that up to 15 or 20 to create those liquid smooth tones. Now, typically you're not going to notice these when we're exporting web images or small images for print. You're only going to see these subtle differences when we're pixel peeping, viewing at 100%, or we're printing very, very large images. Okay, so but if you do like those new defaults, now all we do is hold down that Alt or Option key, click on the Set Default button. Now, this little dialog that pops up may disturb some people, because if we look at this note down here, it says please note that these changes are not undoable. Now that might lead you to hit cancel, thinking I'm not too sure whether I want to commit to this or not, but rest assured these changes are actually undoable. It's a slightly ambiguous statement there, so I'm just going to hit the update to current settings. Now if I hit reset with this image, you'll see that the sharpening and the noise reduction stays the same, and that's what it's meaning. They're not undoable, because when we hit reset they go back to the new defaults, and you'll see the new defaults also includes the new camera custom profile rather than the Adobe standard. So my images will always look like this without making any adjustments now that they're imported. If for some strange reason I wanted to go back to that Adobe standard and less sharpening, then all I need to do is again hold down the Alt Option key, hit the Set Default button, and then restore the Adobe default settings. This would allow me, when I hit reset the next time, to go back to Adobe standard and all of the neutral tones that we would start with before having gone through this process. Now I'm just going to cancel out because I much prefer the accurate colors and a slight addition to the sharpening that we're seeing here. Okay, so that's creating a new camera profile, and you're going to need to do that with every lens, different lens that you own for your camera. So if you've got 3 or 4 lenses, you're going to have to create new defaults for each lens, because this is specific to a lens camera combination, because obviously with some lenses you may want less sharpening to go with those. Okay, I probably ought to go up to lens corrections here, because one other thing that you may want to apply for your new defaults is to enable profile corrections. Now we just saw a small amount of vignetting being created by the lens being removed, because this action of enabling the profile corrections has found the lens that this was captured with, which is a 90mm f2.8 Sony lens. Okay, so a small amount of modification, because that profile for the lens, Lightroom can make the necessary corrections so we don't see any of those aberrations or characters that the lens is introducing to the image. Now typically we could also, in the basic panel, choose remove chromatic aberration if we're using wide angle lenses. This is a short telephoto, so I don't actually need to do that in this instance. But you'll also know in the profile selection we actually have an eye information here. It says built-in lens profile applied. Okay, now it did take out the vignetting when I hit the enable profile corrections, but it's telling me that some of the corrections were automatically done for me without checking any boxes. So let's just click on and see what was corrected here. It's saying this raw file contains a built-in lens profile for chromatic aberration. Okay, so this is being removed automatically, so I don't really need to remove chromatic aberration for this lens. It probably wouldn't hurt if I did check the box, but it's just noting that some of these lens corrections now are being applied automatically to my raw images. Okay, so let's moving forward. I think I might just hold down the Option key and set defaults, because I do actually want to enable those profile corrections. So I've just updated again, so now that I hit reset, those enable profile corrections will stay enabled. Okay, let's moving forward now in the workflow. When we create a custom profile, this isn't necessarily going to create the white balance that we want. Now most photographers, I do accept, will be using a auto white balance in the camera. This is particularly problematic in studio photography, because we're often taking the auto white balance off the modeling lights rather than the flash lights. And so if we want a much more accurate white balance setting, we either need to do that in camera and create a custom white balance, or we could do that in post-production. Now we can actually use these color checker cards in order to assess the correct white balance. Now if I just go over to as shot, we'll see that the auto white balance for this camera is slightly off. We see there's a slight color cast there. Now we can correct that just by coming in with the white balance tool and coming down to these gray swatches here, and we generally choose one of the lighter ones to click on, and that will neutralize that. Now we've pushed that up to 4000 degrees Kelvin, and that slight color cast in the white background that we were seeing has now gone. Now you only need to do this once, because as we're going through the workflow, we can tell Lightroom to import every subsequent image with the previous image settings, and that would include the white balance that we've set. So that color checker card can now be removed from the scene, and we can now proceed with our shoot. And typically we only need to take a new white balance reading when the lighting setup changes. Okay, now typically if we're working on location, I wouldn't be using the color checker card. These color swatches do need to be protected from the elements. It comes in a little passport type booklet where we can actually close that to protect it from the weather, but I still wouldn't take that out onto location. This is the sort of white balance tool that I would use. It's actually called a Y-Bal. It's not made from cardboard, so even when left out into the rain, this surface, which is checked for absolute neutrality, can be used and just inserted into the shot, either onto the tabletop setting that we're using, or you can just get the model to hold it, and then we can just in post-production come in and click on that just to make sure that our shoot is absolutely neutral. Okay, so let's moving forward. Before we start tethering, you may want to check that your camera USB settings are set to PC remote. Now some cameras automatically have a USB setting called auto. Now typically on many cameras this doesn't actually tell Lightroom that we're about to shoot tethered. It thinks that maybe we're just transferring images from the memory card. So if you can't for whatever reason pick up the camera in Lightroom's tethered settings, then just make sure that the camera in the menus is set to PC remote. Okay, that's the setting that you want in order for the software and the camera, to talk to each other. Okay, so typically many cameras are included in Lightroom by default. Okay, if we just come up to the file setting here and go into Plugin Manager, you'll see that we have Canon and Nikon plugins already installed for us. We also have a Leica Tether plugin. Now you'll see here that I have an Alpha A7 plugin here. Now Lightroom didn't ship with this plugin. I went and searched for this online, and I paid for the plugin and installed this basically by just going to Add and then picking up the plugin and adding it to my plugin. Okay, so I can actually shoot tethered using a Sony camera using Lightroom, even though Lightroom didn't ship with that ability. Okay, so let's just moving forward. Okay, now when we fire, maybe I should just do this. This is a screen capture, but if I come over to the file menu and choose tethered capture, start tethered capture, this is the dialog box that will open for you. Now typically you're going to give your shoot a name. Let's just call this I'll call it a Sony product shoot perhaps. And you can segment by shots. Now what this actually means is if you've got several models that you're shooting or several products that you're shooting, each time you can put a new product or a new model into a subfolder, so you can separate those out quite nicely. Okay, so that's a good option as far as I'm concerned. We can then choose to rename our images. We don't just have to import them with the file numbers. So we can take session name and sequence, or custom name and original file number, and maybe we could call this the product. Maybe it's the new A7S A7 S2 camera that is the new product that I'm capturing, and maybe the next product is a microphone. So I'll start a new segment or shot when I change the product. Okay, so and I'll also change the custom text as well. Okay, now you can choose to add this to a collection. Now, typically when we import in the shoot folders, but if you wanted to add it to a collection as well, you might wonder what is the advantage to adding it directly to a collection. And the reason that we might want to do this, and maybe we'll look at this again later, is we can synchronize our collections so that they're live online. So if our art director was not at the shoot, they could be watching the shoot unfold using their iPad or mobile phone, and they're basically hooked into your gallery of images, and they're being updated constantly as the collection feeds those new images live to the internet. Okay, now the other thing you probably want to do as you're importing the images is to apply a metadata preset. Now here I'm going to embed my copyright. So if I wanted to show you how we set this up, let's just come up to new, and we could open up and call the preset my name. Maybe I'll just do Option G on a Mac for the copyright symbol, and then Mark Gaylor, and then we can choose what copyright we'd like to add. Now I'm not going to add the basic info, camera info, IPTC. You can do this. The most important one obviously is the copyright info, and we'll signal these as copyrighted, and again I can do my Option G, and this is the text that's actually embedded in the files. Okay, this is just the name of the metadata preset, but this will be embedded in each and every file. Rights and usage of terms, all rights reserved, and probably haven't spelled that right, reserved. Okay, and copyright info, this would be my website, markgaylor.com. So this makes sure that if anybody is trying to do the right thing, they file my file or image floating around the internet, and they look at the copyright embedded in that image, they'll see that it belongs to me and can contact me for rights of usage. Okay, the only caveat of that is don't be posting your images that you value to a social media site such as Facebook, because Facebook will strip this IPTC copyright. But the other web galleries and Adobe and Flickr will preserve and protect your copyrighted information. The only other thing that you might want to, or I might want to check here is keywords. Okay, so you can actually add keywords that you might want to add to each and every file that you do. Okay, that saves having to put them into your specific shoot. Okay, so you can add additional keywords here. I'm just going to cancel this out because I've already done this process, and that is the Mark Gaylor. You can add keywords that are specific to this shoot. So again, maybe Sony Alpha and camera, and maybe ILCE, just some keywords that you want to add to these new files, and then we select OK. Now it's coming up with the initial shot name. Okay, so this is where we get to name the individual products that we're photographing that are linked to the new A7S II system, whether it be a new battery grip or the camera itself or a lens that is coming with this camera. So this is where we name the initial shot, and I'll call it the camera body as the first product in this shoot name, and select OK. Okay, so automatically we see that the camera, which has been switched on and is connected via a USB cable, has appeared. Okay, if you do encounter any connection problems, it will say camera not found or disconnected, and you're going to have to check that you've got a good connection, your batteries have not died in your camera. You might need to restart this. There is a help menu on the Adobe website if you're having trouble connecting, just make sure your camera is supported with the plugins. So again, Adobe publish a list of supported cameras, and if your camera is not supported, I'll be showing you a workaround in the second half of this demonstration. Okay, here is we've got is none, the first image that would come in. We typically have no developed settings applied. Here you can see my camera settings. I can't adjust them in this panel. I'd have to go and adjust them on the camera, but we can hit this little button and fire the camera. And what will happen now is that image will be imported into Lightroom. Okay, so I've just closed that. It's we're just coming in because I'm going to show you the alternative workflow here. Okay, so let's just go back to the library module, and we'll just go to that shot that I've just captured. Okay, and this is the shot, and I can quickly assess whether those values that I had set up with the camera are appropriate and accurate, and if they're not, if it's slightly underexposed or overexposed, I can actually see that. Probably if we're making a very accurate assessment here, is we would go into the develop module and check the clipping warnings just to make sure that we're not overexposed or underexposed. Now when we're into this develop mode and we're seeing the images full screen, if we take any additional images, those will be coming in not as thumbnails but as full-sized images, and this does give us the flexibility of designing the image using a much larger preview than the 2 or 3 inch preview on the back of the camera. Okay, so let's just go back into the grid view here and go back to the slides I'm using to demonstrate this workflow with. Okay, so we've got up to using the tethered plugins. As I said, if your camera isn't supported and you can't find something available, then there is another option where you can still shoot captured. Okay, so if Lightroom doesn't have a plugin available, you may find that the software manufacturer actually supplies software that allows you to save images to your computer, not straight to Lightroom, but to your computer. Now, often Canon cameras are supported without having to pay for an additional product. Nikon's, often you have to pay a little bit of money to get a piece of software that allows you to shoot tethered. Sony also has software available online that you can download, and it's freely available software to use with my Sony cameras. Okay, I don't have to pay for that service, but there are a lot of software applications out there made by third parties that you can search and find whether your camera is supported by these. Okay, so let's just open up my captured software. Okay, let's just come out of full screen view here so I can start that software, and let's just start that, and you'll see it's the Sony one is called Remote Camera Control. Okay, so remote camera control allows me to see the camera settings, and unlike the tethered plugin that's available in Lightroom, this one allows me to cycle around some of the settings and make adjustments without going up to the camera. So here I can change my ISO without having to walk up to the camera to do that. So this is just a little bit more flexible in this user interface here, and I can move over into my single shot or continuous driving modes there, self timers. I've got full access to a lot of the features here, going and selecting a custom white balance or leave it on auto. What I do have to do, and most important here, is I have to choose a folder where the images are going to be captured to. Now I'm going to choose a folder that I've created inside of my pictures folder. So I'll come over and select pictures folder, and then I'll select watch folder. If you haven't already created a folder called watch folder, then you just hit the new folder and create that inside of your pictures folder and nominate that as the folder you're going to be using, because remember, the images are not going to be transferred and copied to your camera's memory card. They're now going to be transferred down the USB cable to this folder. Okay, so we're now able to take images using this piece of software. Now at the moment Lightroom won't see that it should be importing these, but let's come over to the Lightroom menu now, and we need to come down to the File menu again, and we need to set up the auto import, and we come over and choose auto import settings. Okay, now in order for this workflow to work, we need to choose the watched folder that we've just set up. So I just click this button here and browse to the folder I created inside my pictures folder called watch folder. Now what happens is any new image that appears in this folder, deposited there by the camera's software, will automatically get imported into Lightroom's catalog. What we typically do is we move them from the watch folder to a subfolder. That would be our shoot name. This is a little bit similar to what we were doing with the Tethered plugin, where we had a shot list. We create a subfolder for those images to go in. And again, just like the options inside the Tethered plugin, we have the option to create a custom name as well as our original file number. And again, we have the option to create custom text, and I said previously we were capturing the A7S2, so I'll just change that custom text. Now again, we have develop settings. Okay, now here I've actually created a preset inside of the develop module. I just did Command Shift N to create a new preset, and I called those my A7R2 or default. That's the camera I'm using to capture these products. Okay, and I can pick up those presets from either my user presets here, and you can see that user preset that I created here called A7R2 default. That's the new custom defaults that I showed you how to create in the first half of this demo. Okay, initial preview size. Again, we have we have the metadata template. Again, it's the copyright Mark Gaylor. Again, we have the option to add keywords at this stage as we're importing, and again we have the option to come in very quickly with minimal previews, or build a full screen preview, and that's my preferred option here. If you're checking critical focus, maybe you're doing macro work or very shallow depth of field, you might prefer just to come in with a 1:1 view so you can assess absolute sharpness of your images. I'm going to stick with standard and then select OK. Okay, so now we've got that done, we could take a picture using this software. Okay, now this is actually the screen grab, so I'm just going to come back to my Tethered capture software, and now I can actually press that capture, and it takes the picture and starts to import that shot. And let's just go over to the imports. We can see that it's building the standard imports there, and let's just go and find that in my folder. So let's just go into grid view. Okay, and so this is the shot that's just come in. It's the second shot. The first one was done with the Tether plugin, and this is the one now we've got using the software captured software, so the camera software. Okay, so now we've got that one, and we're ready to start shooting. Again, we go into develop module. Okay, I'll just switch over to the camera software, and we can now take another picture. If you're working with two pieces of software, you might want to just collapse or reduce the size of this one so we can pick up the camera software at the same time. I'll just configure that on my desktop so we can be bouncing between the two pieces of software there. Okay, so that's the captured tethered workflow, either using Lightroom's plugin or the camera software. Okay, so let's go back to my grid view and go back to my slides that I'm using to demo with. So we go back over to capture, and we'll look at some of the hardware that you might want to consider when using a tethered workflow. Now let's just go into full screen on Lightroom. Okay, and let's take a look at some of the software. Okay, so we'll just go into the develop module so we can see this image a little bit larger. Now this laptop is being held secure. Obviously, if we're connecting the camera to the laptop, there is a danger that an assistant or a client might walk through the lead and drag either the camera or the laptop down. So both the camera and laptop need to be secure in that environment. In this particular picture, you're seeing the laptop is strapped to this table. This is a table retailed by Tether tools. We can also see the USB cable is protected. Okay, what can happen is if somebody yanks very fiercely on a USB cable, we can damage the USB port in either the laptop or the camera. This little device on this Tether table is called a jerk stopper, and we can get them for both the laptops and also the camera end, so that what happens is we don't end up damaging the USB ports in these instances. I'll just show you the one that is connected to my camera as I'm shooting. We just got this little loop, and basically the jerk stopper is attached to one of the camera straps here, the camera strap lugs, and so if anything is yanked here, we're going to take that the pressure off the USB port and put it firmly on the jerk stopper instead. Okay, so this is a worthwhile investment. These things are very affordable. Just $20 or so will buy you one of these jerk stoppers and may save you a lot of money in the long term. Okay, one of the other things obviously is if we're not firing, even using the laptop software, we can be interacting with the model and just triggering the camera, not from the camera or from the laptop, but using a remote. Now this is my favorite sort of remote. It reduces the need for yet another cable. This cable that we see here from this particular device is just going into the USB port of the camera, and this wireless device is mounted to the hot shoe, and so I'm free to put this in my pocket, roam around my studio or my location and fire the camera, and then just walk back to the laptop as that image has been imported. Another very useful feature when shooting tethered using Adobe Lightroom is something called Loupe Overlay. If I just move forward, and I'll show you a logo. Now if we were shooting for a client who had a logo, or the graphic designer or art director wanted to see how that fitted in with your composition, this would be a very useful feature to be able to, as we're importing the images, see where we need to build negative space inside of the image so we can clearly see that corporate logo or text or caption that we're wanting to work with. Okay, so I'll just come over to my film strip, and I'll just pick up that image of the portrait that we're working at earlier. And what we can do with this overlay feature, I'll just come up to my view menu and roll down to Loupe Overlay, and you can see that I can choose a layout image. Now we need to select a PNG file. Okay, we can create these files in Photoshop CC. Just be sure to save out as a PNG. Maybe just hide the background layer so we do have that transparency, and then we just need to browse to that file. Now I've been using the this file previously, so I'm just going to come to recent layout images that I've already used, and I'll just cycle across to my Dove logo that I've been using. Okay, and then my Dove logo just appears miraculously into the composition. So as the shoot is unfolding now and I'm seeing the model move, I'll know if the model moves just a little bit too far over to the right. I'm not going to have that negative space I need to quite clearly identify the client that I'm working with. So this is a great compositional aid for both the photographer and the art director as we're working. We also have the option in the view menu to work instead of with an overlay such as the layout image, we could also alternatively work with a grid or guides. So we just come over to the Loupe Overlay, and here we could choose grid, and you can modify that grid size. You generally see a little option there like hold down the command key, it said. Obviously that would be different for a Windows user, and we can now change our grid size. This might be useful for people working with architecture, and we also have the option for dragging in custom guides in order to help us design that image. I'll just switch off the Loupe Overlay. It does have a keyboard or shortcut if we don't need to keep coming back to this menu. If we just come down to the Loupe Overlay, you'll see there we have on a Mac, that's Command Option O. And that will get rid of the overlay. So Command Option O for overlay, and we hide that. Okay, so that's a really useful feature when shooting tethered that many people working in advertising or editorial will want to access there. Okay, so let's take a look at another useful feature when working with a tethered workflow. Just come down to my film strip so I can move forward to the next slide here, and I want to talk to you a little bit about develop settings. You've seen that we've been able to bring images into a Lightroom with a modified default setting. We can also modify the setting to include a stylized look, so an art director or client or somebody we're working with in the team can see images that are not in completely raw state but are sort of leaning towards the stylized look that maybe they're expecting to see when the image has been processed. Okay, so let's move forward to this particular slide. Now you may be working with a client who's instructed you to that the images need to be in black and white, but given that you don't have a black and white digital camera, obviously the images are going to be appearing in front of everybody who's working on location as color images. You can then quickly drop them to black and white, but sometimes it'd just be easier if those images were appearing straight off the bat with a black and white developed preset that you've created. So in order to create that preset, you just basically come into maybe your black and white option here on the treatment, and then you might go in and mix up the colors here. So typically with portraits, if we want to be a little bit flattering to the sitter, we might give a little bit of bump in brightness or luminance to those orange values, and might want to bring the blues and aquas down. You may also want, for instance, to put in a little bit of a vignette. Maybe I'll choose a color priority vignette there just to darken the edges. And typically what happens with black and white, we just give them a little bit more of a pop with a little bit of contrast, and also maybe just opening up the shadow values so those don't go too dark there. Increase the shadow, the contrast a little bit more. Now we've got that sort of a black and white look. Maybe we want our images appearing directly into Lightroom with that little pop. So we're just going to do a Command Shift N in the develop module, and this will bring forward the develop presets. Okay, now I'll just call it my black and white pop here, and that will go into the user presets. Now typically I'll want the treatment selected, the black and white mix, the contrast, shadows, process version, of course, lens, vignetting. So all of the things that actually make up this particular stylized look. If this dialog box opens with all, just select none, and then just add the ones and only the ones that are adding to this particular look. And so then we'd create my user preset for that. Okay, so I'll just return back in my snapshots to where the color version of this file. Okay, and so what is happening now is if we're working with that camera software, and we've got the preset. Let's just go and pick up that camera software again. Let's just go and open up my remote camera control there. Okay, it's warning me my battery is a little bit low. That's a good warning to have there, so I don't carry on shooting while the battery's flat. We're going to be moving over to the watched folder. Okay, and same as before, but this time instead of using the A7R2 preset there, we're going to come over and choose my my auto import settings just to modify that default setting. So instead of the A7R2 default there, I'll come down to my user presets and choose my black and white pop there. Okay, so that's great. That's all I need to do there. We've modified the develop settings there. I'll select OK. Now I actually have a file on my desktop. I'm cheating a little bit here. I'll just drag that into my watched folder, and as we know, the import preset will watch that. It'll quite quickly realize that another file has appeared into that folder and will automatically be re-imported. So let's just go and look at that one. Okay, and there it is. This is the image that's just been imported. It was a color image, but now has come in with that black and white pop preset applied. So that's really quite a clever way of working with a client who doesn't really understand that RAW is unprocessed and typically won't look as good as a JPEG even until you've done a little bit of processing. But that's going to be the first look that they see inside of this image. So that's a really very useful feature. If, however, the client or art director is not even at the location but want feedback about, is the clothes working, is the makeup working, is the background working, then what we'd do is we'd just drag that file into a folder, or sorry, a collection that is synchronized. Here, for instance, I've got a folio collection here. Okay, and you can see from this little icon down here, this is a synchronized collection. So all I need to do is just drag that to my folio, and that's going to be added to this synchronized collection. Now that image is inside of this synchronized collection, anybody who I give the URL to is going to be able to quickly see that in any web browser. They don't need the app Lightroom Mobile. This will be a public gallery where they can view these images. These images, however, are live previews of actual RAW files. So there's a really a big advantage of working with this Lightroom Mobile. So I'm free to just tweak those files inside of my Lightroom collection, and those will update as the client is looking at them. So let's just move over to that URL. I've probably just given enough time for that to synchronize now, and so we'll just click on the URL inside of my Lightroom dialog, and we should be able to go over to that folio collection in my web browser now. Just take a minute or two for this to load. This is actually quite a big collection of images there, and we should be able to see the image that has just uploaded from Lightroom Mobile. Okay, so just loading a few more images, and I'm looking for that image, so we might need to synchronize that again. Just refresh that page. It's probably working from the cache there, so just give me a moment or two and we'll be able to see that image, and there it is, okay, in my collection. So obviously it would have been better to create a new synchronized collection in this particular view. Okay, so what we can do now is obviously a client maybe on their phone or tablet is viewing this image, and quite quickly now they can just want to make a comment. We can just go in and just write a comment. Okay, beautiful, well done. I've got a very complimentary art director here, and just post that comment. Now what will happen is they don't need to ring me, I don't need to ring them. That comment's come off to me, and basically what will happen is inside of Lightroom now, just giving it a little moment or two, we'll basically be able to see a little flag appear that's saying that there's a comment waiting on this image. Okay, so let's just go and take a look at that. It might take a moment or two, but we should be able to see the comments come in for this particular image in just a moment. Okay, and the comment has just come in, and there we can see that comment, and I can add comments and back to the art director from directly into this box, and we're starting that communication. So that's great. So okay, thanks, and that will appear back in that Lightroom gallery live online.